Okay, so we have a file to download today. Where are we today anyway? February 5th. So download food inspections. So food inspections, I think I already have it downloaded. So food inspections it's just data from the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago has the philosophy that, we're a public entity and all the data that we produce is public data, and so we're going to publish it. And it looks like I have an errant end sub in here. So it's because I probably had the example in here and deleted it before I uploaded it, but let's just put a sub in here, maybe highlight data, color data. Okay. So this data is just from the regular operations of the city of Chicago. So their Department of Health or the Department of Food Establishments or something, they have inspectors that go around and inspect places that sell ready-to-eat food. They don't inspect grocery stores. If you're a grocery store, it's kind of a different group that inspects you, unless in your grocery store you also sell ready-to-eat food. Like if you have a food court or something, there, or like a little restaurant or something. So we've got a grocery store here that does get inspected by these folks. So here's the name, Duke's. It's a restaurant. It's a high risk. By the way, what does high risk mean? Anyone have experience in the food preparation industry? High risk means you're working with food that can make people sick. So that's like almost every restaurant is high risk. You could sell ready-to-eat food that's not high risk. One of them is like hard ice cream. So like if you're scooping frozen ice cream out and putting it on a cone, that's like medium risk. Can ice cream go so bad it will kill you? Yeah, but nobody will eat it by the time it's gotten that bad. So it's not a big risk. People don't get sick from eating like hand-scooped ice cream, and so it's like medium risk. And then low risk, I don't know what qualifies you for low risk, but there's even some that are low risk. So we have the address. Not surprisingly, these are all in Chicago, or almost all in Chicago, and all in Illinois, but there's the zip code and everything. So then we have the inspection type. So this was a short form complaint. What does that mean? It means someone complained. I don't know what short form is, or if we even have a long form complaint. Well, yeah, there's a thing called a complaint, and then a short form complaint. I don't know the difference. This is just the way the data comes. And then we have the results of the inspection. You either passed, you passed with conditions, or you failed, or you're out of business. We came by to inspect you, your doors were closed, said for sale on the doors, and so we didn't inspect you. Be a pretty good trick if you could see the guy coming and put a closed for sale on the door and he wouldn't inspect you. And then we have the latitude and the longitude of the establishment. Okay, so, and our whole point for today is to look at branching, at being able to say we're gonna have something happen, and then based on that, we're going to either execute some of this code or we'll skip some of this code. So that's conditional branching. And we'll also talk a little bit about just unconditional branching, but anyway, so we'll get to those two kinds of branching. So we're really looking at saying, we've got all this code, but only under some conditions do we want this code to execute, and then under other conditions we want this other code to execute over here. So even though we could do most of what we're going to do today with like conditional formatting, it happens that this is a pretty good example just to kind of put different colors on these cells to look at these different options for conditional branching. So I am going to bring up my VBA window, actually. All right, so we've got these two side by side, and I've made this sub say color data. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a loop that will go through all of this data, and then we're going to look at different parts of this data, and we will decide kind of how to format the cells as a result. So this loop you could probably write almost in your sleep by now because we've done it dozens of times. Dim, R, as, long. So just something to keep track of the rows that we're working on. O-O-N-G. We'll have a do loop, do and loop. We'll put a do events in this so we don't put ourselves accidentally into an endless loop. We'll increment R so that we kind of actually move through the data. We'll give ourselves a way to get out of this loop. We will do until, let's see, what's the name of this sheet? This name of this sheet is Food Inspections on the tab, but its code name is sheet 1. So let's just work with sheet 1. Sheet 1.cells row number R, column number 1, tell that value is blank. Equals a zero length string. Okay. By raise of hands, how many of you are looking at that loop saying, I so totally could have written that without your help? And if you're saying, you know what, I think I could have got mostly there, might have had to look at my notes for something on this. I wasn't quite sure how to do events. That's okay, good place to be. If at this point you're looking at that loop going, that looks like totally foreign language, like not even VBA, but Greek or something, probably a good time to get in, spend some time with TA or spend some time with me to, you know, I'm expecting you to be a little further along. At least if this looks familiar and you feel like you could have gotten partway here by now. Okay, so why do we have so many quotes over here? I don't want this many quotes, I want 2 quotes. There we go. All right, so what do we have going on here? Okay, so now what I want to do is introduce the idea of the if statement. And the truth is, the if statement is so fundamental to programming that I'm sure that I have snuck in 1 or 2 if statements along the way in our other examples. We're going to talk about all the different variations of it today. So we said we got to have an if and you have to have a then. Those are the only 2 kind of syntactic words, reserved words that are required for the if statement. Now, what we have here in the middle is something that's going to evaluate to true or false. Anything that evaluates to true or false. So let me just do this one. 3 is greater than 2. Is that true or false? That's true. That's true. How about this? Not false. Is that true or false? That's true. That's another way to get true in here. Here's an even simpler way. True. Is that true or false? That's true. Okay. Now the thing that I want to be careful of is that the examples that we're going to be doing is always going to be something of the form A equals B. So we've got something is equal to something else. And so you're going to have the tendency to want to believe, oh, that's the way the if statement works. If, then I'm going to have to say something, and then I have to have an equal sign, and then I have to say something else. If these 2 things are equal, that's when we're going to do it. But that's just one way to get to true or false. So let me run this first one just with saying true. T-R-U-E. So any way that we can get to true or false, we're going to do something. And now, if I only have 1 statement to execute conditionally, I'm going to do that right here on this line, right after the then. In this case, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to set the value or column 1. I'm going to be looking at column, why don't we do a C here, because we can see this is the name, the also known as name of the establishment. I'm not going to change the value of it. What I'm going to change is the interior's color. So interior color, and there's some pre-named colors. There's lots of different ways to get at colors. How many colors are there to choose from? There's like 16 million. One day, I said, you know what? We got way more than 16 million cells. I'm going to do all 16 million colors. So I wrote a loop that would just loop through and do all the colors. And so I thought, this is going to take a while to run. 16 million is a while. I'll let it run overnight. It ran for about 2 seconds and stopped and said, too many colors. It really told me too many colors. That's rude. So there may be 16 million colors, but you can't use them all at the same time. Okay. Interior color equals, now, one of the ways that we can get to a color is they have some constants that are predefined. Now remember, you know, a color for VBA is just a number between 0 and 16 some odd million. So there's a constant called VB yellow. And it's just one of those numbers between 0, and that's what yellow is. VB red. Red's the only one I know by number. Well, there's 2 I know by number. Red is 255. Whoops, VB red. And that's 255. You know, white is the very last one. It's 16 million something. It's the very last one. Okay, and so, but we have these we have some that are pre-named. So I'll work with those because they're the easiest to work with. Color is equal to VB yellow. Now, somebody tell me what this is going to do. What just tell me in English, what will this code do when I run it? Go ahead.
Make cell R, column C, cell number R, yellow. It goes through all these.
Yeah, this is always going to evaluate. And so you told me what this line does once, but what does the whole code do? Yeah, it's going to do all the data in column C, except for the header. These should all go yellow. So we'll run that, and actually it's going to do nothing because I have an error. What is it? Do until sheet1.cells Oh, and here it gave R a value. R equals 2. So it came here when R was 2. It came through and said, if true, yep, that's true. Then execute this line. So row number 2, column number C, make it yellow. Row number 3, column number C, make it yellow. Number 4, C, make it yellow. 5, yellow, and so forth. Okay, so now I want to do something here that is, depends on the row that I'm looking at. But now that I've already made them all yellow, it'll be tough to tell which ones go yellow. So let me come up here, maybe after my dim, before I start doing my work, and let me just say sheet 1 dot cells. Now you're used to seeing cells and me telling which cell I want, but what happens if I don't tell it at all? It means all the cells. And I'm going to say dot interior dot color, C-O-L-O-R, index equals XL none. So that's the way I take the color off. I can set the color. By the way, color index has like 53 or 57 different color indices that you can work with. And they're not really great colors. They come to us from the days before there were 16 million colors. Excel used to have just like 57 colors you could work with. And that's the color index property. Anyway, that's the only way you can take it off. You can set the color with the color property, but you can't set it to no color. You've got to give it one of the 16 million colors. Okay, so that should now clear it. And now we'll put a condition in here that makes these yellow. So why don't we just make the name go red, yellow, or green, depending on whether it's a high risk, a medium risk, or low risk. So in this case, let's just say if, and we'll look at another one of these cells. Okay, so now we're looking at column number F, column letter F. And if that value is equal to risk 1 high. Oh, let's see, yellow is medium. So let's do risk 2 medium. Then I'm going to bring this down on the next line. Well, no, I'm not. I'm going to leave this on one line. You'll see why in just a minute, but let me give myself a little more room here. Okay, so now we should start off by clearing away all the color, and now we're only going to execute what happens after the then if this condition is true. So we'll run that. And now the only ones that should be yellow are the ones that say medium risk, medium risk, medium, medium, medium. So interesting that McDonald's is medium risk. Anyone work at McDonald's? Aren't they starting with raw meat, or has the meat come to them cooked now? It's real estate. It's not even meat. That's what you're saying? That's what you're saying? Delicious. So anyway, it's kind of surprising me. And the data could be wrong here. I don't know. But these are classified as medium for whatever reason. Okay. It's entirely possible. I don't know whether it works in the city of Chicago, but it's entirely possible that they go, wow, there's this company that's got their processes, their procedures so well that even though under normal circumstances they'd be high risk, we're going to give them a medium risk, which means we don't have to inspect them as often. I just don't know. Data could be wrong there, but I don't think it is. Okay. So now, great. So now I'm just going to go ahead and copy this 3 times, and we're going to go risk 1 high. Risk 3, is it just low? And low, I'll do VB green. And high, we'll do VB red. V bread. And that should get almost all of them. Where's my run button? Oh, here it is. But I think there's some that don't have a risk assigned. Yeah, so Carrasco's Grill, no risk assigned. That's the only one, but so that one ends up white because none of these are ever true. Now, tell me, if this one is true, is there any reason this one's true, is there any reason for me to even look at these other two? Could they possibly be true? No, they just couldn't be, because if it's equal to risk 2 medium, it is not also equal to risk 1 high. It just isn't. And so there's a structure that lets us kind of take that into account. So here's what we're going to do. Actually, let me do one more thing here. And I'm going to bring the red up as the first one. So there's another version. So the thing about this form of the if-then statement, to where we put the line that or the statement that executes conditionally on the same line with then, is that I can only do a single statement conditionally. What if I want 2 statements conditionally? It takes a different form. And here's what the different form looks like. I kind of like the black on yellow and the black on green, but I think what I would like to do here for the red, I'd like to make that white. I'd like the text to be white. So I want 2 lines to execute conditionally. So I've got the first one here making the color red, but now I want to make the font color to white. So font.color equals VB white. Now, does anyone see what the problem is with what I've just done? What's the problem? You're nodding. What's the problem? So your thought is somehow we haven't done anything to kind of bind these two together. So you're saying we're going to go if then, we'll do this one, and then, so this one will be conditional, but then this one will always execute. The reasonable thing to look at, that's not what's going to happen. The truth is, go ahead. Yeah, right. So right now it won't even execute because it's not syntactically valid. I have loop without do. Oh my gosh, this is a terrible error. Here's the error. Loop without do. Wait a minute. I can see the do. It's right there. Loop, do. What does it mean, loop without do? There's not another loop in there somewhere, is there? And here's the thing. When I have a single line to execute conditionally, I can put it right up here on the then. But if I'm going to do multiple lines, then I put them on the next line down. But now this becomes what we call a block if. And a block if starts with if, and it has to end with another word that tells it this is the end of the block. And that word is and if. And if. So now if I don't have anything after the then, it goes, oh, block if, we're expecting to find an end if over here. So why did it say do without loop? So once I hit this if, it goes, all right, I'm in an if statement, and I'm expecting to find an end if. It's looking and it goes, that's part of the if statement, that's part of the if statement, that's part of the if statement, that's part of the if statement. And it got to this and it goes, that's part of the if statement? This can't be part of the if statement because what does there have to be? Also on the inside of the if statement. Yeah, there has to be a do. I can put a loop inside of an if statement, or I can put an if statement inside of a loop, but I can't make them go kind of half and half. And so without this end if here, it's coming along and it's going, great, this is a great long if statement, it's beautiful, I love it. And it got to loop and it goes, I don't know what that doesn't mean anything. There's no do. I mean, we can see the do, but it can't see it because it knows that do has to be part of the if. So without that, if you're missing an end if, you'll get error messages that they just don't make sense. But that's the reason it says loop without do. It means loop without do in the current level of construct. Go ahead.
So why did we not do that earlier before we had it?
So the question is, why didn't we need the end if before? And the answer is that this is a special case of the if statement when we have just one statement to execute conditionally. It goes up on the line with the then, and then no end if is required. Back in the early days of BASIC. BASIC happens to be the first programming language that I learned. And back, it was the I guess it was in the early 1980s. In the 1980s, BASIC was really, really basic. In fact, you ask yourself, Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, did he ever really do anything? Yeah, he wrote the BASIC compiler. I mean, that was him. And this was the only form there was. It was if this, then, and you got one line that you could execute conditionally. So this is the original syntax of the if statement. And so that's probably the only reason that it still hangs around, is because it has kind of really, really old roots. If you wanted to do multiple lines, what would you do? You would call another sub-procedure that had your multiple lines in it, and then it would come back and move on. So there's kind of still a way to do it, but it was really pretty awkward. Okay, so that's why we didn't need the end if when we had it up here on the one line. Okay, and now then, so this now end if. So that now becomes a block. But now also, once we've gone into this block structure, we can integrate these other commands in here. Watch this. So I am going to take this line, and before the end if, I'm going to come in here and say else if, one word, else if, some other condition, and I'll bring its line that executes conditionally down, else if and I can even have another just blank else. And the truth is, I can have the else without any of the other else ifs, right? You can say if this, then do this something, otherwise do this. By the way, what would this do? Whoops. What this one does, I probably should have shown this before about the else ifs in. This is going to set the, better go back to all that block that I got rid of. Let me cut that, and I'll just drag these down and change them. I'm going to set the one that doesn't meet any of these other criteria to blue. So we'll make this VB blue. So we run this, and so now this is going to say it's either high risk. If it's high risk, if this is true, then we'll execute this block. Otherwise, we'll execute this. So this is like the false block. If the condition is true, we execute this. If the condition is false, we execute this. So tell me in English, what am I going to get when I run this? Go ahead. And everything else. I was happy about everything they said except restaurants. We don't care about if it's a restaurant or not because we got things besides restaurants. But yeah, whatever establishment this is, if it's a high risk, it's going to be red with white font. Otherwise, everything else is going to be blue. That's right on. If it's high, are they all that many high risk? Really? High risk, high risk. Yeah, there's that many that are high risk. Okay. So as it turns out, okay, good. So that's exactly right. But now I can say, listen, if it's high risk, make it red. If it's not high risk, let's look and see if it's medium risk. If it's medium risk, make it yellow. Well, if it's not high risk or medium risk, let's check and see if it's low risk. And if it's low risk, make it green. And if it's not any of those, then make it blue. So now this is what we call the if, else, end if structure. We have the initial if statements, either true or false. If that one is true, we execute these lines, and the moment we hit else if, we're done. It doesn't even look at this condition. Is it possible for me to have a condition here that's true and have another condition here that's also true? Yeah, these two can't both be true because they're both looking at the same thing. But couldn't I here be looking at, instead of column F, I'm looking at column N? Yeah, they could both be true. So, but in the if, else if, end if structure, only one of these blocks can run, period. You can't, it wouldn't matter what you did. You couldn't make both these. Could I have something happen inside this block that makes this one true? Yeah, I could actually say, I could write inside this if block that column F's value is risk 2 medium. I could make this condition become true during this block. So then would this block execute? No, because I don't even ever look at the condition. As soon as I find a condition that's true, I execute its block, I get to the end if, and I'm done. If this one's false, what do? I jump immediately to the else if, and I check, see if this one's true. Nope, that one was false. I'm going to come right to here. Is this one true? Yes, this one's true. So I execute this, and I'm done. Let's say that one was false. I come to the else. There's no condition here, so I execute this block. So in this case, because I have an else clause, I can look at this and say exactly one of these blocks will execute. So before, we could end up with some of these rows that never got colored. But in this case, because I've got the else, for every row, one of these blocks will execute. Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
For my else, I put it on the same row. After that.
Oh, so down here, you put in else, and you're saying, I want to put that right up here on the same line. And when you leave that line, the interpreter goes, oh, you got to put a colon in if you want that. Yeah, it does work. Don't do it. Let me show you what it's doing. It's kind of unfortunate that it does that. It is syntactically invalid to have anything after this else. This is the end of the statement. I mean, it's like a compound statement. It's the end of the statement. But it's possible to have two statements on one line. I think we saw last time that we could, normally we make the assumption, one line per statement and one statement per line. But if you want to have a line that breaks onto two, or a statement that breaks onto two lines, you can do it. What's the character? What's the line continuation character? Yeah, space underscore. Space underscore, I can take this one statement and put it on two different lines. It's also possible for me to take two statements and put them on one line. Watch this. I'm going to say debug.print 5. And then I'm going to have a colon and say debug.print 22, and another colon that says message box with the current time. That's one line. I'm going to hit enter. Oh, MSG box. It has printed the 5, printed the 22, and now it's displayed the message box. So I can put multiple statements on a single line separating with the colon. And it's unusual for the interpreter, for the editor here, to like kind of correct your syntax that way. But it goes, look, you really want a statement after the else? No problem. You just have to tell it it's two statements on one line. So it's unfortunate that it does that because it's really poor form to do that. And the reason is when I look at this structure, and it's the reason I have these tabbed in as well, it's so I want to be able to see the logic here. If, else, else if, else if, else, I can see that right there. And then I just look between those blocks to see what it's actually doing. And so if I've got part of this line brought up here on the else, there's just no good reason for it. And it makes it harder to see the logic of the statement. Other questions? Go ahead. Oh, you've seen me do both tabbing and spacing? So, yeah, the truth is in VBA it doesn't matter tabs or spaces. All white space vertical and leading, in fact, even all white space. Now, inside of a string, white space is important. But if the editor would let me, I could space this then out here. But the editor goes, you don't need that space, and it just kind of sucks it out. But syntactically, it's still okay. And whether they're spaces or whether they're tabs, it doesn't matter. Yeah, your workbook will be marginally smaller if you use tabs instead of spaces, because each space is a character. A tab is one character, and it does more. So it'll be a few bytes. Maybe a few dozen bytes smaller. It's not a big deal. Just kind of your own preference. Yeah, I kind of mix half and half. Okay. So now if I run this, it should bring back in the colors. Oh, yellow. Did I not change? Oh, it's because these were white before when it was blue. So I need to come up here where I'm resetting my color. I need to reset my font back to black. So cells.font.color. Oh, I lied. There's another color that I know the number of. 0 is black. VB black is also black. There we go. So now I've got black for my yellow and my green. And green. Jili sushi is low risk. Not only are we starting with raw meat, we are serving raw meat. That sounds more like a payoff to me. Someone gave the inspector something under the table, classify as low risk. Oh, thank you. I don't know. All right. It is Chicago, after all manner of corruption. Anyone here from Chicago, are you? They've cleaned up their act, I guess, since Al Capone. I don't know. All right, so that is the if, else statement. The important thing to realize here is that this is, that these conditions are totally independent from each other. I could be looking at column F here. In this case, I'm always looking at column F. But here I could be looking at column N. Here I could be looking at the name of the sheet. Here I could be looking at the number of cells in the selection. They're just whatever it is to go as true or false, they're completely separate in this version. Yep. Oh yeah, could this become complex? Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So let's move on to a different column. So we've just done some coloring here on column number C. Let's scroll over a little bit. And let's put some coloring onto column E. Now this one, why don't we do something about whether they passed or failed? So we've got fail, we've got pass, pass with condition, and some other ones, not ready, out of business. We came to inspect you. There's a sign on the door, closed, building for sale. That'd be a pretty good deal. You can see the inspector coming, quick, put up the closed sign. They're closed, but people are in there eating. How strange. Oh, well, they're closed. Not going to inspect them today. All right, so let's look at a complex condition. So let me just kind of come in here. And now maybe I'll start off with the same if statement. Okay, so let's say that now what I'm interested in is I want to see, though, I want to really highlight those outfits here that they're high risk, they have a failed inspection, and the type of inspection was a re-inspection. So there's a couple of different kinds of re-inspections. Let's look at it. Yeah, so here's a complaint re-inspection. Somebody complained. We came out to inspect, and what must have happened at that complaint? At that inspection from the complaint? You must have failed because we came out and re-inspected you. And in this case, they passed. Do we have any re-inspections where they failed? Re-inspection pass, re-inspection pass, re-inspection fail. So here, this is a complaint. Someone complained about whatever was going on here. And, you know, who is it? Sorry, Jinya Ramen Bar. Someone complained. The inspectors came out and said, sure enough, you're doing something really wrong. People are going to die. So fail. By the way, once you failed an inspection, how does this, what happens, you know? You guys aren't really in this industry. So they give you a certain amount of time to fix it. They might give you a fine there immediately. Usually not. Okay, you failed this inspection. We're coming back in a week. You got to have this fixed. You fail the second time, and it's like, maybe after the first one, but I think it's after the second one. I'd have to go look at the rules again. Then the fine is like per day until you get this fixed. We're going to charge you $500 a day, $1,000 a day until you get this fixed. You know, and really, if you don't get it fixed, what does that mean? We're going to put you out of business for this. That's what they're doing. Okay, but anyway, so is this a high risk? Yeah, look at this one. This is a high risk. Someone complained. We inspected, you failed. We re-inspected, you failed again. So you failed twice in a high-risk establishment. Those are the ones I want to know. So this is a little more complicated because I've got to look over here, I've got to look here, and I've got to look here to be able to tell that. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. So if, let's do if M is a fail. So if column M is a fail, then we're going to make column E go red, and maybe we'll do this red and yellow. Column E, VB yellow. Okay, so if I run that, that should make all the failures go yellow. What did I miss? Oh, not if M is risk 1 high, if M is fail. Okay, and you know what? That's kind of hard to read, so I'm going to make this go bold as well. Font.bold equal to true. Since I'm setting the font.bold somewhere, I'm going to reset it up here to font.bold equal to false. So now I'm going to bring in the next condition. So if this is fail and it's high risk, oh, that's column F. So I'm just going to copy my high risk line and bring it in. So I'm going to say right here, and it's high risk, then. So now we should lose some of these because these are not all high risk. Well, maybe they are. Most of them are high risk. Do we see any that are not high risk? High risk, high risk. Ah, here's a medium risk. So line 28 should go clear on this one because it no longer meets this criteria, this criterion. So yeah, line 28 now is no longer included. But now I also wanted to do if it was a reinspection. I'm getting too long to fit all of this on the screen. So I'm going to break this into multiple lines, underscore, so space underscore. I'll bring this one in here, space underscore. Now for this one, I don't think we've seen this. Let me show you this. So there's a function called, the trouble is, yeah, this will actually help for the homework that's due on Monday. By the way, I thought I had the grader ready for the homework that's due Monday. And it's having some little mistake in grading. So I don't have that. It's actually on my educator. I don't have the link built to it on my educator yet because it's not quite ready. So I'll have it ready. I'll have it ready tomorrow, but I'll put an announcement out when it's ready. So you'll see an announcement on Learning Suite. Okay, but this will actually help you with the homework for Monday. There's a function. So Monday is about manipulating strings. Strings just collection of characters, right? The string variable. So there's a function called instr, which looks to try to find one string inside of another string. So I'm going to be looking at, well, let's just go ahead and hard code it here. So I'm looking at something that says canvas reinspection. So we have canvas reinspection and we have complaint reinspection. And so I want to be able to get either one of those. And there may be other kinds of reinspections I don't know about. So if this thing says reinspection anywhere in it, I want to know about it. So I've got something that says canvas reinspection. I'm looking for just the word reinspection. And that then tells me that it finds reinspection. This is the string it's looking for. This is the string it's looking at. It finds this string, reinspection, inside this string where? At the 9th character. The 9th character, there's the first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, that's the 9th character. So that's where it finds it. Yeah, this starts at the 9th character. It found one string inside of another string. And the way it tells me it succeeded was giving me a number higher than 0. What does it mean if it doesn't find it? It gives back 0. 0 means it wasn't there. You know, if it found it at the very first place, like capital C, then that would find it at the first character. Okay, so now I'm going to do that, but instead of looking at a fixed string here, I'm going to be looking at the cell that I'm interested in. So if it's this and the in string of where is reinspection, it's in column L. Column L, so using the in string function, I'm looking for reinspection in column L, and that is greater than 0. That means it found it. Then I'm going to color it. So now I've got a complex condition. I'm only going to execute these 3 lines if this whole condition is true. Wow. So when I said whatever between the if and the then has to evaluate to true, it can get pretty complex in here. Question here. If I want to put the then down here, I can do that again, but I have to put an underscore, and then I can bring that down here. And the truth is, some programming languages do this. They have if, and then you got some whole thing, and then is on another line. They're pretty uncommon anymore these days. But that's a kind of a valid way. I mean, people have thought about it that way as the right way to do it. So you say if, and especially if you're doing something really complex here, I kind of like it, you know, for this. But it's really unusual in VBA. We usually see the then just kind of at the end of whatever the last line my condition is. And quite often, frankly, we'll just let this run off the screen. And so the idea here is that if you really want to look at that, just scroll over and see it. When I first started programming, you printed your code out to look at it. It was really difficult to kind of edit it, on the screen. And so if your code was wider than your printer could print, it was pretty difficult. So we found ourselves trying to adjust for the printed page. Nobody prints code anymore. Well, somebody might, but not very many people print code anymore. And so it's becoming more common just to kind of even let it go off to where you say, there's some condition over there. If you want to see it, scroll over and see it. Anyway, the reason I'm breaking it is not because I'm printing it, it's because I want you to be able to see the whole thing at once. Okay, so this should pull, there's probably only very few of these that are failures, high risk, and re-inspections. So this should go away mostly. So we've got 1, 2. Ooh, a school. Siri was about to chime in on that one. Poor school. What was it, a complaint? Oh, it was just a canvas. They just came by. And again, that's the lunch ladies there at the school. I always knew something wasn't getting into the pot that was supposed to. Or maybe it's the other way. Now, it's not just and. Let's do, what else could we do here? Let's say if it's a failed, okay, if it's also a failed and a short form complaint. Do we have any short form complaints that failed? Short form pass complaint. I don't think we have any short forms that fail. Okay, so if it's a complaint that fails, you have some of those. Okay, so if it's a reinspection, if it's any kind of reinspection for a fail and high risk, that's great. Or, I'm going to come in here and put an or, and I'll break that onto a new line. Or what? Or if it's, why don't we just do this? If it's any kind of short form, no, we'll do if it's a failure. Underscore and, whoops, and underscore. And it's a failure. No, if it's a failure, of course, if it's a failure. Oh, and it's a complaint. So if column L is a complaint. Regardless of whether it's a reinspection or not, if it's any kind of failed complaint, I want it to show up as well. So we got a couple of ands, 3 ands here, and we got an or. This is going to get ugly. Let's just see if that was right. So here's a bakery that showed up. It's a failed complaint. The school we saw before, grocery, failed complaint. We look pretty good. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. So we have an order. It's a question about order of operations, right? Is this or getting applied to these 2 statements that are on the outside of it? So I'm sorry, does it bind this or this, or do the ands happen first? And the answer is the ands happen first. So order of operations, just like you've got multiplication happens before addition, ands happen before ors. But the truth is you are much safer to expressly put those parentheses in place. Even though this won't change the way it executes, because in this case, the order of operations was just what I intended. But I've got this now bound together in a set of parentheses, and then this bound together in a set of parentheses. That's a safer thing to do. Makes it easier to read, and you're clear on what you've done. So we'll execute that again. It will not change how it executes. Still does the same thing. So we can get complex. Is this a super complex? This is a complex condition. Is it really complex? It's not really that complex. You know, it could get worse. If it gets worse than this, though, you probably want to think, is there a different way for me to think about this problem? Because it turns out one of the biggest places that, that logic errors are made. What's a logic error? A logic error is that the computer looks at what you told it to do and goes, I can do that, no problem, I'll do it. But you're telling it to do something different than you thought you're telling it to do. One of the biggest places that happens with complex conditions. The human processor, This is cognitively difficult for us to get right. And what's the reason, by the way? You know what kind of the limit is on your working memory? It's like 7 little pieces of information, roughly 7. Depending on what you're doing, 5, maybe as many as 9. So what do we have that we're working with here? We've got this one. That's something we got to think of. We've got the and. That takes up a little spot in our memory. That takes up a spot. And as soon as we get more than 7 of those, 7 little pieces in there, we've got to kind of break this down into different parts. We can't evaluate it all at once. And as a result, they're really tough for us to do. Anyway. So complex conditions. We got a few more things to cover. You ready to go? Let's move on. We can put a complex condition any place that we can put a condition. All right. Hey, let's do this. Let me throw one more thing in here while we're at this. Okay, so here we have the bakery. Do we have these above here? You're all the way above. I'm gonna take the or out of this for us. This whole or condition's coming out. I want something that doesn't strike until really low. Darn it. Okay, I'm gonna put another and on here, and that it's a school. So one more and in here. And column E is school. I really don't need these parentheses anymore, so I'm going to get rid of these because it's just, if all I have is a bunch of ands, that's really not too complex. I can kind of chunk this into smaller pieces to think of pretty easily if they're all ands. So if you're thinking I got 20 conditions that are all ands, I should break it up. No, you're probably okay. But as soon as you've got multiple conditions, some are ands, some are ors, that's when you got to be worried. Okay, so if column E says school, okay, so this should only be executing for one line. Okay, now, but we still have all of our other code that's doing these lines over here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a different way to branch. So far, the only branching we've seen is this variations on this if statement. But I'm going to do this. So if I ever make it into this, I'm going to go ahead and do the coloring for this one. And then I'm going to say exit sub. Now you're familiar with end sub. End sub marks the end of my sub procedure. This is a whole block of statements I'm running together. Sub, end sub. Exit sub just says, you know what? I don't know how I got here, but as soon as this line executes, I am out of this sub procedure. From right here, jump to the end of the sub procedure and move on with whatever's next. So in this case, this whole complex condition never becomes true until we get here to line 71. So all this stuff's going to happen, but as soon as we color this one, we're going to exit the sub procedure. These lines, we're truncating the loop early. These lines aren't going to get executed. Make sense? Let's run it. Yeah, so we came right down to here. That took us into the exit sub, and we skipped right past these. So that's a different way to branch, is just to say, get me out of here. In the early days of BASIC, there was another statement called go to. And you could just say, oh, you know what? At this point, just go over here. And that made for terrible code. This is the closest thing we have to a go to, just exit sub, and just says, drop us to the end of this block. Incidentally, there's an analogous one for the for loop, exit for, and for the do loop, exit do. I could say here, and have the same effect, I could say exit do. Would do exactly the same thing because there's nothing happening between the end of the loop and the end of the sub. So you can exit loops and you can exit procedures with that exit statement. Go ahead. Exit sub exits you out of the sub procedure. So if there's more code down here, it would skip right over that as well. Yeah, exit do takes me out of the do loop. I'm still supposed to be looping through this adding one until the condition takes me out, but this overrides that and says just, we're done with the loop, get us out. The one thing that's unfortunate that there's no way to do in VBA kind of on this is to say, you know what, skip the rest of this loop and go back to the top. A lot of languages have that. Go back up to the top and start the next iteration without doing the bottom of the loop. There's no built-in structure for that in VBA. Question? Okay, so let's look at a different way to do branching. So not the exit do or the if statement. It's called the select case statement. And it doesn't get used as much as it should because it's really quite elegant. So we say select case, and then we're looking at something. So why don't we just look at the types? So we're going to make our restaurants one color, our grocery stores one color, and so forth. So we're going to be looking at column E. So I'm going to say select case column E. Now, with the if statement, what comes after if has to evaluate to true or false. With the select case statement, after case, I can have any expression. Expression just gets me down to a single value. It can be complex, it can be mathematical, as long as it comes down to a single value. So hold that thought. I'm going to come here and put end select. And then inside, I'm going to say case, and I'm going to look for equality between, for one of the things that I have here. So one of my things is restaurant. And so I'm going to say if it's a restaurant, then I'm going to want this column's color to be blue. If it's not a restaurant, I'll check to see if it is a grocery store. If it's a grocery store, then I'll make it green. And incidentally, on the times when I have just one line that I'm executing conditionally, it's often really handy. The code will actually read better if I do bring these up onto the same line. And the editor will respect the space after that colon. So I can kind of make all of these line up, and this will end up reading a little bit better. But I can have multiple lines in between the cases, just like with the if. Yeah, go ahead.
Each case has to have like case for situation performed and case for the
Yeah, it seems like strange. We got case used twice, kind of in two different contexts here, and that's exactly right. Yeah, I would be better if this word here just wasn't, if it's just select and then this thing and then the case. Yeah, now that I think I told you at the beginning of class, one of my former students works for the guy that led the team for VBA. I'll go ask him. I'll ask him all these questions. Why did you do it this way? There's probably a good reason. I don't know what it is. In the back, go ahead.
Are you supposed to have the second case on each line?
Oh, no, thank you. That's right. No case here. That's what you were asking? Oh, sorry. Yeah, that would be bad. Yeah, it's just this case here. What else do we have? We got school, and then we'll do else. Golden dinner. Golden dinner is like a category. Oh, golden diner, thank you. Still, that's its own category. There's no VB orange, unfortunately. What else we got here? Gray. I don't know if that's one that's predefined. Is purple defined? I don't know. No orange. Okay, we're going to have to, another way to get there is RGB, and then you can specify a number between 0 and 255. So let's do 0, 0, 255. That's kind of a light blue. And now we'll do case else. So you can also do an else here as well. And we'll make this one bright green. I think that'll be a different green. That looks like it's the same green. So let's add a bunch of red into the green and see what we get. Looks like that's too much. Let's put 100 in there. I think that made it yellow. Oh, you can barely see the difference right here. You can't even see the difference. Let's throw some blue in. I don't know what we're going to get with that. RGB. There's something different, even though it's not readable. Okay, so the difference here for the case statement is that, and this is the key difference, there will be a question on the midterm. This question is on the midterm. What is the fundamental difference between select case and if, else if? And the fundamental difference is here, I'm looking at a single value and doing comparisons always back to that single value. Is this equal to this? Is equal to this? Over here, each one of these conditions is totally independent from the other. There's no reason that these have to be, they are in this case, they're all looking at column F. There's no reason they have to be. They're totally independent from each other. I should have stopped the recording for that. That'd be your extra bonus for being in class. The truth is, my guess is most of the folks that aren't coming to class probably aren't watching the videos either. By looking at the video count, it doesn't go up that fast. Okay. That would require effort. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that would be pretty good. I should leave everything in except the answer. This is your benefit for coming to class today. Redacted. I should beep it out. Beep. That would be too much effort. Okay. Okay, last thing. And that is on the select case else, or yeah, select case else structure. We can do things besides equality. Actually, we can pick from multiple choices. Do I have another one in here that we haven't actually done? Yeah, Golden Diner. Is that right? Where's Golden Diner? I don't quite know how to spell it, but Children's Services, whatever this one is. Children's Services Facility. So I'll come in here and I'll make that one go just like restaurant. So I'll come up here to restaurant. Oh no, let me do it like grocery store. I'll come up here to grocery store and I'll just put a comma and put another option right in here. Ugh. That's making it hard for me to see these on one line now because that one is so, oh, you know what? I'll just break this part onto a different line. It's still too wide. You just space it over a bit. And I don't have to space this over to execute, of course, but it's just to make it kind of readable. So now, if it's either grocery store or children's facility, it should go as green. So here's that children's services facility that comes up. What is that, like a daycare center, maybe? I don't know. Okay, one other thing. So it's not just equality or equality among a set, is that I can do some things a little bit more complex. So I'm going to do another select case, but this time I'm going to build on column N. Column N is my latitude. Now these are all in the city of Chicago. And so they don't have that much variation here, but it's like from 41.6 to 42.1. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, I'm looking at column N. Now I'm going to say case is greater than 42. Then I'm going to make that, I'll make column N. What we're going to do here is we're going to go with shades of gray. So the further north it is, we're going to make it a lighter shade of gray. So equals RGB. And if I put the same value in for RGB for all three colors, it's going to be a shade of gray. So I want this one to be pretty high, so I'll make this one 200. The highest is 255. Now, if it's greater than 41.9, or greater than 41.8, 0.7, 0.6, and that's kind of it. Maybe we might leave one and select. We might leave one unpainted here. There's not, there might not even be anything. I don't think there's anything below 41.6. So I'll just say case else here. And then we'll just move these down by 50 each time. So this one will be 150. Actually, let's make this one 250, which is almost white. I mean, 255 is white. That's almost white. We'll make this one 200. We'll make this one 150. We'll make this one 100. And then we'll make this one 50. And this should be case else. By the way, is there any line that has more than one of these case statements true? Yeah, in fact, almost every line has more than one of these case statements true. Only the ones that are greater than, let's see, that are 42 or that are greater than 42, this will be the only one. If it's lower than 42, but greater than 41, then these will both be. And so almost all of them, this one's greater than. So, but because they're mutually exclusive, that's why we're going from the highest one first, right? If it's in this little top block at the top, color it, and then we don't worry about this one. If it's not in that one, let's look in the next one down. If it's not in that one, look in the next one down. And so this should give us kind of a color banding on our latitude. And so the closer to white it is, the further north it is, and then the closer to black, the further below. How come these are all white? What's wrong with our code? Why are these all white? We had an exit do in there. We're not doing anything on this bottom row. It's all uncolored. Okay, so you can do some things. You have more power to be able to make complex conditions in the if structure, but your code is a little simpler over here in the case structure. Can you do and ors inside of cases? You can, but usually that's not what you're interested in. To do that, you'd have to, like this one, you'd have to have this one say true. And then you could have some condition down here, this and this and this. So you can make this one behave a lot more like the if then else statement to do that, but that's unusual. If you're doing complex conditions, you want to move over to the if then else block. All right, that's going to be good for now. Don't go away just yet. How do I turn this thing off? Stop share, close.